along. Why do you suppose I took 25 minutes out of our time together to have you read these articles? Some of them are from 2001. They're 14 years old. Are they even relevant? 2002. The one I brought in, which is the Aar1am4 article, that was mine to bring in. I brought that in 2012. It's a little bit different beat on it, though, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk first just a little bit about the Ed Leadership One Rigor Redefined by Tony Wagner. It's 2008. Those of you who read that one, what did you think of that? You went to all the different schools, you know. Good, bad, bleh.
I liked it. Good. I got a lot out of it.
Did you think it's still relevant?
I think it's beyond relevant.
Actually, I think most of these articles, even if they're old, still have a relevance to what's going on. Because, you know. So tell us why you thought it was good.
I like the idea that, and this is something I try to talk to all my students about middle school or high school, is the real world and what's going to be expected, and here's why we're doing this, you know. And I think what this gentleman found out about how students need to know, young people need to know how to ask questions, how to think, how to have a good discussion, how to work in teams. He said that business owners and leaders, there's too much fuzzy thinking, not knowing how to write in a real voice. Also, we need to develop young people's capacity for imagination, creativity, and empathy, that it is key for the future of the United States to be competitive in any kind of world, not just the business world.
He says it's not enough just to produce a product at a certain amount of money. It also has to be creative. It has to be desirable. It has to be something people want.
He also said that students are afraid to take risks. They're just afraid. They're afraid there's lack of leadership. Not that they can't take responsibility, but they're afraid to say, hey, I'll do that. Or they wait to be spoon-fed.
Not just students.
Well, and he was talking about, when I'm talking about with the article, this guy went to businesses, from Apple to name a business that starts with Z, and then he went to several schools as well. And so this is why I'm talking about what the business side of the people are saying.
And Iowa business leaders have said the same thing, because in my other hat, you know, I told you I work for the Race Center. We get all the results of the businesses and what they want. And they talk all the time about kids who can, number one, think and solve a problem, work as a team, work or work independently, and come up with their own creative solutions. And they're talking about creative solutions, not just, if this doesn't work, then I'm stuck, I don't know what else to do. Tony Wagner talks about curiosity and imagination. And here's my question to you. Can you teach curiosity and imagination? Is it something you have or you don't? Think about yourself.
You can give them
Are you
opportunities
curious?
to develop it.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I was an elementary teacher and elementary principal for years. I will tell you, when those little preschoolers, I did preschool 6th grade and then whatever, they came in very curious and imaginative, always. I had very few that weren't. And if they weren't, they were just terribly, terribly shy, you know, they hid under the desk. But they came to us that way usually. You've heard this before. By the time they were in 5th grade, they were afraid to make a mistake. They were afraid to say the wrong thing. Now, I'm sorry, I don't believe that's all teachers' fault. I don't believe that is. Because I don't think we create an environment in which kids are not allowed to make mistakes. I think we encourage them to make mistakes because that's how we learn. But I think society in general doesn't want us to make mistakes. How many parents have you had, or you as a parent don't want your kids to be wrong, don't want them to fail, pick them up, right? You know what I'm saying? Think about these things. So how do we keep our kids being curious and imaginative? Because that's the kind of stuff we really need. And how do we as teachers deliver that to them? I think the first thing you do is you model it. I think you encourage it by modeling it. Okay, enough on Tony Wagner. What about tying the bell on the cat? Anybody want to jump in on tying the bell? Go ahead,
Well,
Jared.
it's a topic, they talk about agreement on academic standards and standards-based. There are standards-based schools in Iowa, and they talk about some of the questions like accountability and linking standards to assessment. And then it brings up some real issues. I made a list of what I thought were social promotion. Standards does away with social promotion. Is a D a passing grade? Rick Wormley said a D is a coward's F. Core versus elective offerings, how would this set with some people? Non-academic electives available only for students having achieved their grade level standards.
Yeah, you can't be in band or chorus or do any of those things until you've achieved your academic standards. How does that set with people? Does that make you just want to stand up and punch somebody? Okay, there you go, girlfriend. Well, I was a music teacher originally, a long, long time ago. That's how I started. And I will tell you, I had a lot of kids that was the one thing that they really loved and they did well at, and that kept them coming to school, it kept them engaged. Oh my gosh, you take some of those things away from them, it would have been bad, bad, bad. So, I understand his logic here, though. I don't necessarily agree with it.
But that's talking about moving the
Yes,
standards
he is.
from other areas into those
Exactly.
subjects.
He's talking about,
Making
as a music teacher, I would need to be teaching those standards as well.
Right.
And I felt like, whether I realized it or not, in my early years when I was teaching kids how to read music, and how, when you sing, you break words down into syllables. I was helping them learn how to read, absolutely. And a lot of kids could learn to read by doing it rhythmically, because that related to them. Now, not every kid, because everybody's different. I'm just saying you were teaching those things. It's just maybe I didn't realize it as much, because nobody said, by the way, Connie, you need to be teaching reading too, okay? Well, they didn't say that to me, so I didn't make that cognizant attempt to do that. Anything else about B? That's good. Thank you, Joe. Yeah.
I like the part, I think I said this in there, not all kids should take the same classes, especially at the high school level. Some kids still need basic math. They don't have their multiplication down. Some kids need to be in geometry. And the whole idea of 9th grade math and 10th grade English is not, we
No.
are not pushing kids that need to be pushed, and we're not helping the kids that struggle. We're all lumping them all and saying, you all have to take 10th grade English. And
We're not meeting the needs of kids, rather we're
Right.
conforming to a set.
Right,
Yeah.
and anyway,
That's okay. That's okay. I heard somebody say something that we're kind of caught between two things, and we are. We're caught between doing the right thing to get those test scores where we need to be, because once we get the test scores where they need to be, then we've got the freedom to do what we really want to do. And I had my superintendent tell me that once. Connie, you've got to get your ITBS scores up before you can start doing all these other things that you want to be doing. However, I believed that the things that I was going to be doing were going to help those scores, but it wasn't test-taking skills. So I was caught. I was conflicted. And you all know exactly what I'm talking about. So, very good point. How about C, Crayola curriculum? Did this make elementary teachers want to?
That's how I used to teach right out of college.
Because that's how we were
Because that was
taught.
how we were
Just
taught.
activity-based.
Yep, cut, color, and paste.
Mm-hmm.
The kids that ate the glue, you got them different glue.
Yeah, there you go. Can I quote you on that? Because that is really good. Well, it's true. I have to tell you, though, the kindergarten teachers that I worked with, not at all. It had evolved great. I mean, my kindergarten teachers were teaching kids to read in kindergarten, But do you think it still happens?
Oh, you bet it does. Yeah.
I think in some districts, most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
What'd she say?
She said in some districts it maybe does.
When you're
Kindergarten
looking
kids
at,
are.
the article was talking about like English as a second language, and I live in southern Iowa now, so I know what that can be like when you have, when you can spit in Missouri line. But, yeah. But it's a different ballgame down there. We have in our district 4 full-time English as a second language teachers, K-12. Granted it's a bigger district, but there is a lot more coloring going on when you can't teach someone to read English because they don't speak English. So, I don't know, I think that there is probably some truth to that article, it just depends on where you're at in population.
And it's a good thing to think about, to just make yourself cognizant and realize that there's some things that go, I know that, I tell you, one of the hardest things about elementary was setting up the centers. If you've ever taught elementary, to have meaningful centers that really kids learn something at and kept them occupied. Otherwise, you know, it was a discipline nightmare. I mean, it's just it's hard to come up with those really, really good centers. I learned that from my teachers. I didn't do it very well, but I learned it from my teachers who became very, very good at that. Okay, last one, just briefly. How did you like my Lori Ungerman article? Yes.
I really liked this one, and I think the biggest point that I liked from it was it talked about how students are really apprehensive of challenges because they're too afraid to fail.
Yep.
And we talk about that all the time. I mean, failure is necessary to grow. And if you show that as a teacher, you know, for example, in my music classroom, I'm not the greatest piano player, and I tell my kids this, but I tell them every day I get better because I'm practicing. I get better every single day, and they see that throughout the year. Oh, she is getting better, so maybe I should try a little bit harder because I might be a better musician for it. So.
Great. We are the best example and the best model sometimes. Go ahead.
I liked her analogy with, she talked about how she was doing yoga, and she said, like, she just could not understand rigor until she took a step up in her yoga class, and then realized that, you know, she had to challenge herself, so she did that, but then she kind of talked about how she was able to modify some of the things that she couldn't do because she'd been taught earlier how to modify it.
Yep.
And then also how she felt really good the first couple hours afterwards, but then was completely wiped the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And so her point too was, you know, you can't have rigor 24/7 in your classroom because you'll burn your kids out.
Yep. And yourself. Yeah.
And yourself. And that I felt that was pretty good.
That's kind of why I like the article. It has to be an ebb and flow. You have to provide it, but it cannot be a constant thing. Everybody needs to be able to take a breath and kind of, okay, I'm good at this, I'm comfortable with this, you know. Everybody needs that. Go ahead, dear.
I was going to say I really love the analogy too, because I think a lot of us as teachers, we grew up, we love school. That's why we came back and did this job. And school was easy for us, and we figured out how to function and to work in the classroom. And I love the thing that she talked about, how in her yoga class she could only do about 60% of the poses, but the trick was that she learned to modify to be able to get along until she mastered that pose. And I think, you know, when she talks about how as teachers we need to not only build that in, but make a point to let our kids know, this is how you modify, you know, like fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I think kids sometimes think that if they don't get this magically right at the beginning,
Then they can't get it, and they can't get it at all.
And I love the idea because, you know, I think about myself in a yoga class, and there's a lot of modification that would happen.
You do.
But also she says, you know, she watched as people came into the class and kind of judged by who looked like people who would excel at yoga. And I think, you know, kids figure out very early on who are the smart ones, who are the dumb ones. I mean, in their heads, that's what they think. And I think that it's important that they understand just because you didn't get it the first time doesn't mean you're dumb and doesn't mean you can't get it. You just have to figure out the tools to use to get where you need to be.
And that's tough, and I'm interrupting you, that's tough in our one and done society. Everything's right there when you need it. If the electricity's working, you're one and done. Learning is not one and done.
Well, that goes back to that Crayola curriculum thing. If you looked at my college notes, they had doodles everywhere, they had colored highlighters and every color you could get, and that's the way I learned. So I think it depends on your student and what makes it stick for them.
Exactly. Well, the reason I had you read these is because I wanted you to see the perspectives. I think they're relevant articles, and it kind of provides a basis for why we're even doing this. It's a good conversation, and I will tell you right now, I know, getting kids to move from here to the next level to be a little bit more difficult is not easy, because there's a natural pushback. You know, when you try to get kids to think, a lot of times they just don't want to. They just want you to tell them what you want them to do. It's so much easier. And I totally get that. Sometimes as a teacher I was that way with my principal, just tell me what you want me to do. But life doesn't work that way. there's not somebody there all the time telling you what to do.